As all of you know that preprocessor is the first stage of a compilation process. Preprocessor has its own works. As you know, preprocessor for input for the preprocessor is the .c file, and output of the preprocessor is a .i file. And yesterday I'm trying to tell you, preprocessor is like a copy command only, but copy command will copy the source file into the destination file simply, but preprocessor will do some additional works, advanced copy command we can say. So preprocessor is responsible for including the header files. Preprocessor is responsible for comment removal. Preprocessor is responsible for macro replacement and also it is responsible for conditional compilation. So this type of discussion, and preprocessor, it will remove the comments in the .c file or not? Answer is no, it will not remove the comments in the .c. In a .c, if any comments are there, it will not put into the .i file. In a .c, as a C programmer, you might have included any header files that is kept into the .i file. Like that we are trying to understand it. And if you want to communicate with the preprocessor unit, there are some predefined commands are there, predefined keywords are there. Those are called preprocessor. Those are called as a preprocessor directives. All the preprocessor directives starts with a symbol called hash symbol. All the preprocessor directives starts with a hash symbol. Like this type of discussion happen. And we are trying to understand the difference between the hash include angular brackets and double quote inclusion. So when you include the header file in the angular brackets, will you agree it will search only in the predefined path? Again, when you include the header file in angular brackets, it will search only in the predefined path. It will not search anywhere else. But when you include the header file in a double quote, first priority will be in a predefined path, present working directory. Then it will go to the predefined path like this. So after that, we started analyzing the concept of macro. What is a macro means? Macro is a small part of the program which is replaced with another part by the preprocessor. So how to define a macro we are trying to understand. Hash define keyword we need to use. Hash define macro name and macro body, like this we discussed it. The benefit of macro, there are two benefits. Benefit one, what is it? Readability. The statement can be easy to understand by sometimes by writing the macros. Example is sek underscore set sek underscore cur, like this. These are the example readability purpose. Second use of macros is, what is that second use? Replacement becomes an easy. Suppose you implemented one project. Will you agree, in a project there may be multiple source codes? When you are implementing any project, there may be multiple source codes. Okay, suppose when you started implementing the project, you decided that buffer size is, you are implementing the protocol, you decided that packet size is 512 bytes. Again, suppose you are implementing one protocol. In that protocol, you need to write a packet, you need to design a packet. You decided the packet size is 512 bytes. According to that, what you did is, in multiple source codes, you might have declared so many buffers to process that packet. What is the packet size? 512. Packet means a buffer where the data, that packet, whatever I discussed in a structure, that is different. Suppose you are implementing the protocol where the protocol will process 512 bytes at a time. I will put this point in another way. You are implementing the protocol where data transferring and data receiving, You are processing the data and you decided that at a time you need to process 5 to 12 bytes before getting the point. So because at the time of specifications, at the time of development, you decided that at a time you need to process how many bytes of data? At a time, how many bytes of data you need to process? You decided that we need to process 5 to 12 bytes of data. According to that, you declared so many places, so many arrays. Now, in this, how many files are there? In this project, how many files are there? 4 files are there. So, by combining these 4 files, you created an executable file. Your protocol is working properly. Your program is processing 5 to 12 bytes of data. But later you decided that from 5 to 12, I need to change it to 1024. I need to upgrade it to 1024. Now tell me, from 5 to 12, if you want to change it to 1024, will you agree as a programmer, you need to open each and every file. In that file, wherever you used 5 to 12, you need to change it to 1024. Manually, you need to change it. Wherever you used 5 to 12, you need to change it as a 1024. So because you are manually changing, there is a chance of human errors, right? There may be a chance sometimes at one particular line you may miss that one, because thousands of lines of your source code, multiple files. Will you agree? In such cases, macro will help us a lot. Just when you are developing the program, you decided that declare a macro has defined packet size as 512. If you're getting the point. In such type of cases, so what you need to do is, yes, hash define buffer size as a 512. So in all the source codes, instead of writing 512, use this macro there. So if you want to replace it from 512 to 1024, will you agree? You no need to go to each and every source code. You no need to modify. You no need to go to each and every source code. You no need to modify. Just in the hash define in the place of 512, you write 1024. Work is done. The hash define in the place of 512, you write 1024. The work is done. And recompile the source code. Got the benefit of macro? First benefit is readability. Reading. Second benefit is replacement. And one more interesting thing about the preprocessor macro replacement we need to understand. Macro replacement we need to understand here. Observe here. Today date is 14_1.c. Observe. Has defined int as a char. Has defined char as a float. Has defined float as a int. How many macros I defined here? How many macros I defined here? 3 macros. Observe the line number 1. What is a macro name and what is a macro body? What is a macro name? Macro name is int. What is a macro body? Char. Macro name is char. Macro body is float. Macro name is float. Macro body is int. Okay. Now in such cases, how the preprocessor will behave, we need to understand. Suppose if I return float f. So after preprocessor, how this statement line looks. Let's tell me. Try to understand. Little bit tricky, but very easy. Little bit tricky, but very easy. How the preprocessor behavior. Is there any macro with float? Is there any macro with float? Yes, sir. Is there any macro with float? Yes. What is the macro body? Int. So can I say in the place of float, it will put int. Is there any macro with int? Is it a macro with int? Yes. What is the macro body? Char. Is it a macro with char? Yes. What is the macro body? Float. Is it a macro with float? Yes. What is the macro body? Int. Is it a macro with int? Yes. What is the macro body? Char. So if the preprocessor method following this method, how we discussed just now, can I say preprocessor, it never finishes the work? Preprocessor will get stuck there only. Then what is the mechanism preprocessor follows in this type of situations? We need to understand. Again, what is the mechanism preprocessor follows in this type of problems or in this type of situations? We need to understand. Observe. Is there any macro with float? Yes. What is the macro body? Int. Is there any macro with int? Yes. Macro body char. Is there any macro with char? Yes. What is the macro body? Float. Is there any macro with float? Yes. But already this float is replaced with int, right? Once again, it will not replace it. Means it will stop here only. If you're getting the point. If such type of situation arises to the preprocessor, so what the preprocessor will do, once again that statement is not replaced because already replaced. Will you agree here? Float is replaced with int. This macro is applied here. Once again that macro for this particular line it will not apply. If you're getting the point. Once again, let's see. Is there any macro with float? Yes. What is the macro body? Int. Is there any macro with int? Yes. What is the macro body? Char. Is there any macro with char? Yes. What is the macro body? Float. Is there any macro with float? Yes, there is a macro with float, but that float is already replaced with int for this particular line. It will not show any error. Float again, float only. I'll show you. Let me compile the code. Let me pre-process it and let me see that. I'll show you. Observe. Void main. cc -e p for my -o 1.i. Observe 1.i. Observe float f only. All of you are observing the line number 60. Float is float only. If you write char, char only. If you write int, int only. Now, is there any possibility that if you want to undefine anywhere in the program, you can undefine? Is there any possibility that if you want to undefine anywhere, you can undefine? Yes. How to undefine? As undef. Is it clear? Undef. Any doubt in this particular discussion? Let me know. After that, we'll discuss the difference between. We'll discuss the difference between hash define and type def. Yesterday, I shared you those documents. I told you to refer it. Anybody? Actually, both are two different concepts, but it looks like a similar. Actually, hash define and type def both are different concepts, but it looks like a similar. You'll see what is it. Observe. In this file, I will mention the today's date here. For variable will be float type or int type. After that, float type only, float f only. When it goes to the translator, it goes to the float f only. Yes, you can use the size of operator and you can show the size. Can you use a size of operator? Okay. Observe here. Anyway, character, what you call integer float size both are same. Okay, let it be percentile LD slash n size of f. I didn't use stdio.h. 4. In this float becomes float only, char becomes char only, int becomes int only. Because after replacement again the same thing is coming. A16, got the point. The size, the student, I don't know what is the size, the student ID who asked this. Is it clear? K2. Okay. Now let's understand the difference between these things. N3 is asking, sir, what is the mechanism name in this macro operation? See, there is no name here, just a symbols these are. M7 is asking, can we change char to int all 4 files at one time? Yes, in all the 4 files you include this header file. Actually, all these macros where we need to define M7, all these macros we need to define in a header files, right? That header file you include in all the 4 files. So that is done. M7 got the point. All the macros declarations, function declarations, structures, enums, type def, all these things you need to put it in a header file. That header file you include in your 4 source codes. So then all the 4 places wherever carry is there, it is replaced with int. Is that point is clear? Okay. Still any doubts are there? Please let me know. Raise your hand so that we can. If no doubt, we'll discuss about the hash define and type def differences. Hash define and type def differences. Okay. So today's date is, what is it? 14. 14 1 22. Yes. So hash define and type def. Hash define is used to communicate with whom? Can you tell me? It is used to communicate with which unit of compilation stage? It is used communicate with the preprocessor unit. But type def is used to communicate with translator unit. Used communicate with the translator unit. Okay. Hash define is a macro, right? Preprocessor directive, right? It is preprocessor directive. Type def is what? It is UDD, means user defined data type. Hash define is a preprocessor directive. Type def is a UDD, user defined data type. Hash define syntax is what? Syntax is what? Hash define macro name, macro body. Type def syntax is it clear? Are you getting the line number 7? Types line number 7 in the chat box. Type def, old data type name, new name, semicolon. Will you agree here semicolon will be there in a type def? Semicolon will be there. And here replacement takes place. Replacement takes place. Means something is replaced with something else. Something is replaced with something else. Will you agree? Here there is no replacement. There is a replacement. Here there is no replacement. Will you agree? No replacement takes place. Old name you can use, new name also you can use. Old name you can use, new name also you can use. Will you agree? And type def is only for data types. Type def is only for data types. Has define is for anything. Example, has define int as a char, has define phi as 3.14. Now here int char as a translator point of view, if you think these are the data types, right? Int char as a translator point of view, these are the data types, right? But preprocessor doesn't know int is a data type, char is a data type. Getting the point? When it goes to the preprocessor, it doesn't know int is a data type, char is a data type. It will treat those as the symbols. It will treat those are the symbols. Getting the point? It will treat those are the symbols. And here only for data types. Example, can you tell me? Type def int as int semicolon. Here note, new name cannot be keyword. Will you agree? New name cannot be a keyword, already known. New name cannot be a keyword. Type def int char error, correct? For example, type def int char means it is an error. Now here old name, new name, anything will be anything. Observe, is that getting the point? Now one very important example I need to tell you here. Has define int star ptr. Now tell me, has define, just a minute, this is a wrong statement, please give me 1 minute of time. Ptr as an int star means you're informing to the preprocessor wherever the ptr is there, you're informing to the preprocessor wherever the ptr is there, replace with wherever the ptr is there, replace with int star. Now tell me, if I write ptr p comma q, what is the type of P and what is the type of Q? I'll answer all the questions. Please wait. One big question came from one of the student called G2. Sir, is there any limitation of rule of giving the name to macro like variable name? No, anything you can do. But macro name should not be a constant. Macro body can be a constant. Macro name should not be a constant. Is that point is clear? You can't write. I'll tell you. Please wait. So what is the type of P? Can you tell me? What is the type of P? Now after the preprocessor, can you tell me how it looks like? After the preprocessor, can you tell me how it looks like? Int star P comma Q. Now tell me, P is a integer pointer. Will you agree? Whereas a Q is a integer, normal integer. It's not an integer pointer. Will you agree? After the preprocessor, this statement looks like this. That statement looks like this. Please try to respond it yes or no. That statement looks like this. So after the preprocessor, when it goes to the translator, it looks like int star P comma Q. So P is treated as a integer pointer, Q is treated as a normal integer. P is treated as an integer pointer, Q is treated as a normal integer. All of you are getting the point. But whereas if I type def here, type def int star as iptr P comma Q. Now here both are pointers. P is a integer pointer and Q is also integer pointer. Because here there is no replacement is happening. But there no replacement is happening. But here something is replaced with something, right? Any doubt in this particular example? Please let me know. K2 wants to ask one question. Yeah, K2. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, that Q, how it becomes only integer variable? Why
Which line you are talking? Which line?
Line number 18, sir.
Line number 18. Okay. Q is normal integer.
But for PTR, we have assigned as int star.
Yes. Wherever PTR is there, preprocessor replaces with int star. Here PTR is there. So PTR is replaced with int star. So after the preprocessor unit, when it goes to the translator unit, the statement looks like this. Int star P comma Q. Getting the point?
So why Q didn't become?
Why? Because wherever PTR is there, the PTR is replaced with int star.
Okay, got it, sir. But for okay, if we would have
for type def, there is no replacement. You are designing a new data type called pointer type.
Okay, sir.
Now here there is no replacement takes place. Now here there is no replacement takes place, right?
Yes, sir. Got it, sir.
Got it?
Yes, sir.
You can mute and you can lower your hand. Now here, when you are designing the macros, you cannot write macro like this. Has define 1 as 2. This is an error. You can write has define 1 as 2. Got the point? Macro name should not be a constant. Macro name should not be a constant. Macro body can be a constant. Name should not be a constant. Body can be a constant. Is that point is clear? Now there the replacement takes place. Here no replacement takes place. This is the things. If this is clear, type C in the chat box. Yes, 32 is asking. If it is a preprocessor related question, S32, suppose PTR into int double star, then what happens? So if PTR is int double star, so P becomes a double pointer, Q becomes normal integer. One of the student is asking one question here. Why hash define int star as PTR not valid? Very simple. It is, I'm not saying it is not valid. Why for? I'm not saying it is not valid. Wherever int star is there, it will replace with PTR in your program. When it goes to the translator, translator may get confused, right? What is a PTR? It doesn't know. Why for? Getting the point? I'm not saying this is an error. If you want to, like in this case, if you want to get more than P and Q and all are pointer variables, so then what you can do is you can write like this: PTR P, PTR Q, PTR R. So wherever the PTR is there, it will replace with int star. So this statement after the preprocessor, int star P. This statement after the preprocessor, int star Q. This statement after the preprocessor, int star R. Got the point? The student just Y4 got the point. Is it clear, Y4? Any doubt? Please raise your hand so that I'll enable your voice. Okay, thank you. I hope you got the difference between these two, right? Any doubt in this macros replacement? Please let me know so that we'll go for function type macros. Now whatever we are going to discuss, that looks like a function, but it's not a function, it is a macro. Next, whatever I am going to discuss, it looks like a function, but it is not a function. That is a function type macro. Is this clear? So now I'm going to discuss that function type macros, nothing but macros with argument. Function type macros, that is nothing but macros with argument. Before that, just give me 1 minute of time, I will be back. Is it okay? Just give me 1 minute of time, I will be back. Fatal error, one of the student is asking, fatal error is a compile time error or runtime error? Anybody can answer? One student is asking, fatal error is a compile time error or runtime error? Answer is, it is a compile time error. Compiler, preprocessor generates, not a runtime error. Runtime errors means operating system generated errors. Runtime errors means operating system generated errors. Got the point? Okay. Next discussion is macros with arguments, function type macros. Again, macros with arguments, which is a function type macros, which is looks like a functions but not the functions. Has defined sum a comma b, a plus b, int sum, int I, int j, return I plus j. As I told you in the last session, when you're defining the macro, one rule you need to be, what is it? Macros, you put it in a capital letters. Variables, you put it in a small letter. You declare in a small letter. And now tell me, line number 1, capital SUM is a macro or a function? Line number 1, macro. But line number 3, it is a function, right? You're trying to understand the macros with arguments and functions, right? Okay. Now observe. Void main m is equals to 10, n is equals to 20, n is equals to 20, comma r. R is equals to capital SUM a comma b. Print of r is equals to percentile d slash n comma r. R is equals to small SUM a m comma n, right? Small SUM m comma m. Observe here. Just give me 1 minute. Okay. Now observe. Capital SUM is a macro with how many arguments? Capital SUM is a macro with how many arguments? Will you agree? With 2 arguments. With 2 arguments. What are those? A and B. These are the 2 arguments, right? But small SUM is a function with how many arguments? Small SUM is a function with how many arguments? Also 2 arguments. But one thing is, macro arguments doesn't have any type, but function arguments are having a type integer. Is that observation is clear? Macro arguments doesn't have any type. It is not an integer, it is not a character, it is not a float. This is one symbol. But function arguments are having a type. Okay. Now, after the preprocessor, let's imagine how the statement looks like. R is equals to, which is mapped with what? M means A, N means B. R is equals to M plus N. After the preprocessor I am talking. I am talking after the preprocessor. But here, is it a function call or macro call? Can you tell me? Line number 15. Is it a function call or macro call? Function call. My question is, whenever you call a function, is the function definition is pasted here? Is this definition is pasted here? Whenever you call a function, function definition is pasted. Answer is no. Those who are typing the S, it is a wrong. When you call a function, function body is not pasted in the place of function call. Why for? Try to understand. It's executed, but it is not pasted there, right? It is executed. It's not pasted there, right? Now here, this function definition is not pasted. But in a macro call, macro body is pasted. Who will paste? Preprocessor or translator? But macro call, macro body is pasted. Who will paste? Preprocessor or translator? Can I say it is a preprocessor? Okay. After preprocessor, this line looks like R is equals to M plus N. But there is no change in this line even though after the preprocessor or even though after the translator also. And this M is mapped with A, this N is mapped with B, this is the macro body. So A plus B means A means M, B means N, M plus N. I'm talking about after the preprocessor, how this line looks. So just for differentiation purpose, the standard says that macros you put it in a capital letter, functions you put it in a small letter. Again, just for differentiation purpose, macros you put it in a capital letter, functions you put it in a small letter. Any doubt in this? Both macros are having its own advantages and disadvantages, and functions also having its own advantages and disadvantages. We'll see one by one. See, one question is asking by the student, sir, how the preprocessor knows? See, the separator between here comma, right? So M means A, N means B. So wherever A is there, M, N. K2 wants to ask one question. Yeah, K2.
Sir, after preprocessor stage, in the program, in the line number 12, R equals to A plus B, code will be altered, sir.
R is equals to M plus N.
Sorry, M plus N.
Yes, definitely. Yes, altered. It is preprocessor did its job. Let's see this. CC hyphen capital E hyphen O, observe 1.I. Now observe line number 19.
Yes.
But line number 22, it is a function call. There is no. B4 is asking if both are small, what happens? Conflicting comes. Translator will generate an error. B4, got the point? To differentiation purpose, that's what the standard says, that macros you put it in a capital and functions you put it in a small. K2, any doubt?
No, sir.
Okay, no, okay, you can mute yourself.
Okay, thanks.
Next, one more important thing I need to tell you in this program. R3 is asking in line number 12, can we pass float because no data type? Yes, that's what I'm coming to this point. That's what I'm going. These macros arguments are having a specific data type. Now, can I say this sum function is only work for adding two integers. It will not work for the float or anything. But macro arguments doesn't have any type. You can use r is equals to capital SUM f1 comma f2. Can we say macros are here? Macros with argument is a generic functions. R3, getting the point? I cannot use the same sum function for adding the two floats. I cannot use the same sum function for adding the two floats. But I can use the same sum macro for adding the two floats. Yes or no? So can I say macros are a generic functions? Is this example is clear? So standard says that macros you put it in a capital letter and functions you put it in a small letter. Macro arguments are having a specific function arguments are having a specific type, but macro arguments doesn't have any specific type. It's clear. Okay, let's discuss some more points about this. If you agree with this, if you understood this till now, whatever I discussed, type 3 in the chat box. So now we need to discuss, whenever you are designing the macros, what are the points you need to take care? Again, just give me 1 minute. When you are designing the function macros, what are the points you need to take care? We need to discuss it. For that, let's take one example so that it will be more clear. Vi 14_3.c has defined mul a comma b, a into b. Macro name is a mul, mul, with two arguments. Macro name is mul with two arguments. Will you agree? Macro name is a mul with two arguments. What is a macro body? What is a macro body? Are you able to listen? Getting any issue with the internet connection? Because today I'm taking from home. I didn't went to office. Okay, no issues. Okay, no problem. Now similarly, I'll define a function also. Mul int I comma int j, written. I hope you know what is this function is doing. Multiplying the two things. It is multiplying the two things, right? Two arguments. Now observe, very interesting and very important point here. Int m is equals to 2, n is equals to 3, comma r is equals to capital MUL, m comma n, printf r, and r is equals to small mul, m comma n, printf r. Now can you tell me, after the preprocessor, this line looks like r is equals to m into n after the preprocessor. Let me compile the code in both cases, are you getting the same result or not? Let's see. See, in both cases, macro call and function call, in both cases, you are getting the same result. Yes. Macro call and function call, in both cases, you are getting the same result. Yes. But I'll do a small change here. I'll comment this. M plus 2, n plus 2. I'll also comment this. M plus 2, n plus 2. Now tell me, macro call after the preprocessor, this statement looks like m plus 2 into n plus 2. Will you agree? After the preprocessor, which is replaced with what? Observe here, what is which is replaced with what? Now observe this m plus 2. Just give me 1 minute. Pen tab is not working. Just give me 1 minute. Yes. Now observe this m plus 2 is mapped with A. This n plus 2 is mapped with B. Yes. Listen. A into B means m plus 2 into n plus 2. M plus 2 into n plus 2. Now tell me, what is the m? 2 plus 2 into 3 plus 2. What is the output here? What is this output you will get? Please try to calculate. Multiplication is higher priority. 2 plus 6 plus 2. Can I say 10? But what about the function call? What about the function call? M plus 2, 2 plus 2, 4 is passed. I holds 4. 3 plus 2, 5 is passed. J holds 5. Now can I say here, macro call and function call both will get two different results. Macro calls and function calls will get two different results. Macro call and function call both will get two different results. Let me see. Let me compile them. Just give me one. So we are discussing what are the small precautions we need to take. See, macro call given as a 10, but function call given as a 20. Can you tell me, I want macro call also should give 20. So what should I do? I want macro call also should give 20. What should I do? You need to group this. You need to group this. So this is one of the points you need to be very careful when you are designing the macros. This is one of the points you should be very careful when you are designing the macros. Now tell me, after grouping, this statement looks like m into 2, n into 2. What is m into 2? M into 2 is nothing but A. N into 2 is nothing but a B. This m plus 2 is nothing but A. N plus 2 is nothing but a B. In a previous case, no problem at all. Getting the point? In a previous case, no problem at all. Now let's see. Now both macros and functions both will give the same result or not. Let's see. Observe. Macros and functions both given the 20 and 20. So this is one of the point you should be very careful. This is one of the point you should be very careful when you're designing the functions. That grouping. You may get a doubt, sir, when I'm calling the macro only I can group it, right? You may get a doubt, sir, while calling the macro only I can, but if I'm calling the macro, how do I know that I need to group it or not? That is taken care by the macro designers who designed that macro. That is taken care by macro designers. K2 wants to ask one question. Yeah, K2.
Sir, in line number 19, can I replace m plus 2 with m plus n and m plus m and
No,
n
here
plus...
anything you can write. While passing the argument, anything you can write. According to that it will.
Okay, sir.
Like here I want to tell you, the function call giving the different result, macro call is different result. But in the previous case, in line number 14 and line number 18, both given the same result, 6 and 6.
Yes, sir.
But in this case, what happens is, the macro call is given as a 10, but function call is given as a 20.
Sir.
So when you are designing the macros, the grouping you need to take care in the line number 3.
Yes, sir.
Got the point?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So which one is a better? Are you talking about S32? Is the functions are the better or macros are the better? Is it? So that depends upon. Suppose functions are having its own advantages, macros are having its own advantages. Now tell me, for previous example macro, this example macro and functions, which will perform the task faster? Function or macro? For adding, for multiplication? Macro. Why? Because function means there are so much of background work should take place. Now can you tell me, in line number 19, is it a macro call or function call? Function call. So before this function execution, will you agree, background so much of work takes place? Before this malfunction execution, background so much of work takes place. What is it? Return address is pushed into the stack. Whatever the function you are calling for, that function stack frame, formal arguments memory. So then the function execution starts. But whereas a macro here, it is giving the faster result. Whereas macro here, it is giving the faster result. Doubt in this. So if the task is smaller, go for macros. Task is smaller means set a bit, clear a bit, complement the bit, check a bit is set or clear, finding the biggest of two numbers. Will you agree these are the small tasks? Will you agree these are the small tasks? Go for this, go for K2. You have still doubt? Otherwise lower your hand. If the task is smaller, okay. If the task is smaller, go for macros. If the task is bigger, go for the function. Suppose you designed, if you designed 10 lines of macro, I'll tell you how to design a 10 lines of macro also. I'll tell you how to design a 10 lines of macro also. If the task is smaller, if the 10 lines of macro, if you design it, if you're calling that macro 5 times, in your program, can I say 5 places the 10 lines are gets copied? Will you agree? In a 5 places the 10 lines are gets copied. So then your executable file size becomes more. Will you agree? The same executable file size becomes more. In the type of cases, don't go for macro design. Design a function. If you more than 1 line, 2 lines is there, body, macro body or function body, go for a functions. Don't go for a macros. For smaller tasks, you can go for the macros. For bigger tasks, you can go for the function. Yes. Ketu?
Sir, like function stack frames and all will be created. For
Here it is not
macros,
created. See, observe, it is looking like a function. Line number 15, it is not a function. After the preprocessor, the statement looks like this. So here, when this calculation is going on, there is no stack frame creation because it is not a function, right?
yes, sir.
Yeah. Is that clear? Okay. So when we need to design a macros, if the task is smaller, go for designing the macros. If the task is bigger, go for designing the functions. Some questions came better if I, sir, macro body can give an address also. Macro body cannot give any address. See, after the preprocessor, this statement looks like that. That's what. There is no address concept, nothing here. Before, got the point? Okay. Anything else? There are so many other things we need to talk about when we are designing a macro. What are the other additional points we need to take care? We need to discuss those also. And today I hope in some of the states they're celebrating the Pongal festival. Is it? So, okay. We'll wind up the today's session. Monday morning 7:30 we'll discuss many more things about the pre-process. Monday morning 7:30. Is it clear? Meanwhile, I'll upload these programs.